Welcome to the Dealing with Goliath podcast. The mission of Dealing with Goliath is to sharpen the psychological edge in negotiation and high-impact conversations for business leaders with skin in the game who want to be more effective under pressure, uncover hidden value, and increase profitability. With expert guests across the business spectrum, we deliver gems of wisdom, delving into their methods, their thinking and approach to business, to life, and to problem solving. This is the Grande Cup of Insight long-form podcast interview, where we take a little bit more time to delve a little bit deeper into our guests' experiences, stories, and to get you those priceless nuggets. I'm your host, Al McBride. My guest today is Nicole Greer. Now, Nicole is the principal coach and CEO of Build a Vibrant Culture, which helps individuals, corporations, government, faith-based organizations, and nonprofits become the people they're created to be through fulfilling a mission to work in teams exemplifying vibrant leadership. Using transformational change, leadership coaching, and training programs, Nicole offers foundational tools and uncommon wisdom to build a vibrant culture. She's a serial entrepreneur with experience in coaching, marketing, mastering first impressions, learning and development, and sales. And if you want to know more, visit her at vibrantcoaching.com. Nicole, welcome to the show. Such a pleasure and a privilege to have you on.
Yeah, I'm delighted to be here with you. I know both of us have some common goals. We're both writing a lot these days, and you were a guest on my podcast, so I'm grateful for that. It's good to be here.
Say, I thoroughly enjoyed that. You gave me a great interview. You got a good one out of me, so I'm very grateful for that. So glad to have you on mine, and thank you for coming. Now, in that little intro, there were quite a few things that I've got to ask you about. First is this vibrant leadership. So talk us through what's the difference between, competent leadership or whatever, that kind of more middle ground versus this aim that you're bringing out of vibrant leadership. Talk us through that.
Yeah, I think leaders need to get excited about what they're doing. That's the first thing. When you see a leader and they are putting off an energy, and that energy is positive, enthusiastic, good, helpful, their vision is apparent, you know what they want you to do, you've got clarity about things, integrity is of the highest calling, and it's all about transforming into the next thing, then you've got a leader who is vibrant. What I experience, though, is I will go places and the leadership is like complacent or worried or down the feeling scale or sad about the price of gas or whatever the things are that have got a leader down the feeling scale. And in my mind, a vibrant leader who is somebody who, first of all, gets their head in the game first thing in the morning and then approaches their work with this very high energy. Now, I'm not talking about, being hyper or inauthentically, razzmatazz, jazz hands kind of leadership. I'm saying I walk in the room and it's like, here's what we're doing today, and here's why it counts, and here's why we're going to do it. I'm very clear, let's go. And there's just that excitement that gets everybody on board. So I do that through a little methodology called Get Lit. Right. So I want everybody to get lit, and that sounds like a lot of fun, doesn't it?
Certainly does. So talk us through the Get Lit. Or do we want to loop back to that? Because I'm just going to ask,
it's up to you.
So, because, very few people, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of leaders usually have some interest in what they're doing, but often that, the day-to-day tasks, the work, like a lot of people in the workplace, maybe they arrive at the job, when they take on that role with a certain level of enthusiasm and interest, and then that kind of gets eroded over time. So I'm just wondering, what are some of these effects? Are you bringing people a spark that they never had, or are you helping them reignite something that was there in the past, or how does that work?
It's probably a combination of both. I think, the thing about running a business is that the first thing you need to do, so I am going to weave in the Get Lit, is you have to lead with clarity. So people need to know what the expectations are, and they need to know that there is a strategic plan and what their part in the strategic plan is. And then there needs to be various and sundry things that resource the team to get that strategic plan done. And there has to be a lot of talk, and there has to be a lot of communication about what we're doing. So that's why the L in Get Lit is lead with clarity. So one of the things that we do not do enough of inside of an organization is cast vision and talk about where we're going. The future can be a huge magnetic pull on people. If the future state is way more exciting, that people understand what's in it for me in the future, it's going to draw people towards that future. So for example, when I go different organizations, they're like, people don't like to change. And I hear that all the time. Well, that may be true, but usually the reason people don't want to change is because they don't have a good reason to change. They don't understand what's out in the future. And if the leader is great at casting vision, and there's a certain skill set with that, you have to be a speaker, you have to learn to be an extemporaneous speaker, you've got to be a strategic planner, and you've got to be somebody who can teach business acumen. When a leader can do all of those things, they can cast a vision where people go, oh, and if we did that, that means the company would grow like this. And then that means I could get a promotion, or I could work remotely, or whatever turns me on, right? So when people understand what the future holds, they kind of can put their head down, do the change, get the work done, because there's not only a goal for the company, but a goal for them personally. So I think leading with clarity is about constantly having the torch, like the leader has to carry the torch, right? So he's carrying, or she's carrying the torch all around saying, this is where we're going. This is what we're doing. This is how we'll get there. There's a guy named Bill Hybels. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he ran a very large organization up in Chicago, Illinois, and he had this video. It's still out on YouTube. Everybody go watch it, and it's called Vision Leaks, Leaks. And he says, here's the thing: you could take a bucket and give it to everybody on your team, and you could pour the vision in there. He said, but it will leak out. Because the day-to-day will make the vision fuzzy and clouded, right? But if you keep telling them the vision, it's like, remember, here's where we're going. It's like peekaboo, right? So, all this stuff comes in. Where are we going? I'm just trying to get this done. We'll keep getting that done, because if we get that done, here's what we get to do next. We're going out into the future, and we're going to have a better state that we're going to be in. And I think that leaders are cautious. They don't want to be wrong. And that's another reason they don't cast a vision. Their ego pops up and goes, be careful, you could be wrong about this.
Well, you're flagging my next question, which was spun in my head.
Okay.
I'm sure when you say this, a lot of leaders are like, yes, I want to be inspired. I want to be inspired, and I want to inspire my staff, but in a structured way. And I love that it is the emotional fuel for this, but it's also the structure, the planning, that you have that strategic backing, which is excellent. But I'm just, so people are getting inspired by this. They're thinking, yes, this is what I want. What are some of those then the next big challenges or obstacles that you help your clients through?
Well, I think you have to have a structure in place to hold the vision up, right? So it's not just a bunch of words, right? So like to your point, I said, cast this vision. Well, then how are we going to accomplish it, right? So the way that we're going to accomplish it is we're going to lay out a strategic plan for it. And a strategic plan essentially is where we're going to say, here's where we want to be in 3 years. Now, I would not suggest going out any further than 3 years, because 3 years ago, we were in a pandemic and nobody saw that coming. But you can cast a vision for 3 years out. Now, a lot of people, instead of starting from the future, they start from the present and start to put their strategic plan in place. So one of the little structures I give people is IRP. Okay, IRP. So the first thing that what I do when I sit down with a team and I do strategic planning, and I'll say, where do we want to be in 3 years, right? And so that will involve all the normal buckets of a business, right? So what's the strategy in terms of what's our business plan? So we got to know what our business plan is. Sometimes it's time to redo the business plan. Hello. Then we have the operations, right? So how are we going to support this plan? Then we have marketing. how are we going to take our products and service to market? Then how are we going to sell our products and services? And then how are we going to provide the delivery of those products and services? So that's nothing new. That's all been around a long, long time. But the strategic plan addresses each one of those areas. And so we have the big vision that for perhaps the CEO and his VPs of all those different areas, the COO, the CFO, the C-suite, whatever, they look at it. But now each one of those individual senior leaders has to have their own vision. So if I'm the chief financial officer, I'm going to have sales and marketing bring the dollars in, but then how am I going to funnel the dollars? What are we going to do with the money? How are we going to pay our bills? What is our plan? So I'll give you a good example of that. I'm working with a credit union right now, and literally I would send them an invoice. It would go to a lady. I knew her name. She would put my information in the computer, and I would get a check in the mail. So we've been doing that a long time. Okay. They just switched. They have a whole new electronic system. I have to go in, upload my invoice into their system. It goes through some kind of fancy thing in the background, and out pops a check. Because now there's all this automation in place, all this AI in place. Okay, so that would be part of the CFO's strategic plan. We're going to put this new software in place. So now what are we going to do with my gal who I always sent my invoice to? What's she going to do? Right? Well, you could say, well, we're going to have to let her go. Or we could find a way to change where she's going to be. So again, there's this whole, human resource strategic plan. What we're going to do with people as we bring in AI and different things like that. So each one of those C-suites or each one of those VPs has to develop their own vision and explain where the company is going. So I think that's really important. So that's leading with clarity. The second part of it is integrating integrity. Now, one of the things that I do in my training is I talk a lot about the quality of people's character is absolutely essential to getting the job done. So we talk a lot about what it means to carry out the core values that might already be in place. And then I work with a tool called the TILT. And the TILT helps us talk about all year long about being men and women of integrity, because here's where we fall out of integrity is we say we're going to do all this stuff and we don't.
And again, what usually stops people? Because is it day-to-day challenges? Is it legacy challenges? Or what?
It's the quality of our character. Now, I want to say something very, very dangerous. Are you ready?
It's going to be controversial, folks.
Yeah. So he said, "Be careful what you say. We can always edit it out." But I'm saying this. I'm not going to edit it out. So if I had a whole room full of people, and I said, "Are you all men and women of integrity?" What do you think the answer would be? What would everybody say?
I think most people would like to think they are and go, "Well, yes,
certainly,
I am, Nicole. Of course, I am."
Right, and the answer is sometimes, but not always.
True.
I mean, that's the true answer, right? So when you think about being men and women of integrity, there's a lot of character traits. Now, when people think of integrity, they think a lot of times about honesty. That's a great one. They think about, this is just a different version, like telling the truth or whatever. But here's what I know. Out there in our companies, we're not always telling the entire truth. We're not practicing candor, which is a much better word than honesty. And there's a lot of discipline that's not in place. And I'll give you a really ridiculous example. I will go places and they'll say, "Well, I emailed Alistair. I emailed him." Well, did he email you back? No, he doesn't email back. What do you mean he doesn't email back? I said, I got nothing. Who's holding him accountable? Right. So then there's this thing of accountability, which is a part of integrity. There's a lot of, dare I say this, a lot of little icky bad behaviors out there. And we've got to, as organizations, clean this stuff up and say, no, if we send, our company policy is if Nicole sends you an email, you send her a return email within 48 hours. And the email might just say, "I can't get to this for another 48 hours, but at least I know you got my email." Right.
So is it
things like
creating
that.
standards and operating procedures that everybody buys into and agrees to, and then they're held accountable to not just each other, themselves, but themselves through the standards?
Yeah, but it is deeper than that. It's like
Of
really
course.
a focus on the quality of character. I mean, because see, here's the thing: people get offended. If I say you're lacking integrity right here, what do you mean? Okay, well, you're not returning phone call or emails within 48 hours. So it's just an email. No, it's a lack of integrity because our policy is. So my thing is like really helping people become better people. Because when people are better people, then we have better product, we have better production, we have better stuff. It's just everything's better if we have better people. And I'll give you another example if you want it.
Please.
Okay, so I had this gentleman that was given to me as a coaching client. Now, unfortunately, when I first got my coaching, like in 2007, I had this pie in the sky thing going on in my mind about coaching. I was like, I'm going to coach people to be their highest potential, and I'm going to work with all stars and all this kind of stuff. And I do. I work with some of these people, but really, a lot of times I'm hired to coach people who need to they need to correct. Let me say that. I need to correct some bad behaviors or lack of character. Because here's the thing. Somebody, I'm going to call this gentleman Bob, okay, just to protect the innocent. But I get Bob, and Bob is a great salesperson. Like, let's just think about that a minute. There's a lot of talent in a guy who pulls in the numbers, right? I mean, just think about how sales is so important. So what do we know about this guy? And we've never met him. If he's like a number one sales guy, we know he's personable, knowledgeable, charismatic at some level, must be showing up, must be hustling out on the road, must be going to the cocktail parties, taking people to play golf, whatever the thing involves. He's got lots of communication skills. Now, here's the problem. When I got him to be coached, the senior VP was a brand new VP of sales. And he says, this guy creates a lot of trouble back here at the office. Okay. And here's what my VP of sales understands. Building a vibrant culture is more important than this guy getting sales, because when Bob comes back to the home office, he's a jerk. And I'm using that word very much on purpose. Gotcha. He comes in, he wants people to break the rules, bend the policy, kowtow to him. He's a little bit arrogant. There's a character trait that's negative. He's just icky. I must use that word. It's a very technical word. He's just icky to be around. Now, here's the thing. How is he selling stuff? See, here's the thing. Bob knows exactly what he's doing. He knows he can be fabulous and accommodating and all these things when he's selling. But because he's number one, he come back and he's a jerk. I mean, this stuff is out there, right? And so my job is to help Bob understand you can't do that. You can't make the girl at the warehouse cry anymore. I'm sorry. And so the character traits we worked on were arrogance. He has a lack of compassion for people, and he's not very patient. So you see all these character traits. He can exercise them over here, but he can't exercise them over here. So I see this a lot. And so that's what I'm talking about when I say we've got to integrate integrity. Like, we have got to be men and women who are great men and women, like really men and women of integrity. And so some people are going, I can totally relate. I have a Bob in my company.
I think everybody has a Bob in their company. Yeah.
Yeah, I do too.
It's fascinating stuff on the culture sense that, as you said, you're talking about it in terms of integrity. Often some people might be having a similar spark in my head, which was the word values. And some people have very negative reaction to values in the corporate or in the business world, because they're often only used to attack you with rather than in a positive sort of, as you said, in a positive way, attached to the vision, attached to the atmosphere that the business is trying to create or continue. And it's just, you touched on that there, where this individual could behave in a very charming way or whatever way that was required to close the deal, close those sales, but then would come back to HQ and would be quite obnoxious and create a very unpleasant atmosphere.
100%.
How far do you bring those values? How far do you? Is it very much that structure of this is what our standards are now, and you abide by the standards, or this place isn't for you, or how do you go about that?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I think is important is, when you're building this vibrant culture, you're going to have to pick what your principles are, right? And kind of like you got to have some taglines that are running through your leadership brain. So one of the things I tell people is coach them in or coach them out.
Okay.
Now, at the end of the day, do I want Bob to stay? The answer is a resounding yes, because Bob gets a lot of sales. Also, Bob is not 25. If we end up, like he may go find another job if he's not willing to change, and then we've still won if he leaves. Because here's the other thing leaders don't understand. Can we go find a nice person who can sell? Say yes, we can go find this person, right? We don't have to tolerate people being mean, all right? So you got to get your head on the game on that. But what a win that would be for us if we helped Bob change. Like really at the end of the day, it's all about helping people be the best that they can be. Like that's where the fun is. That's what leadership really is. Leadership is casting the vision, the strategy, all of that you can do like in a 3-day weekend. But then it's 365 days after that where you're like working on Alistair, you're working on Bob, you're working on Nicole. And that takes true talent, is to get Bob to change. Now, but I'm gonna be unapologetically strong with my coaching and setting my expectations and measuring. So you might be thinking, well, how do we measure integrity? It's very easy. So I have an assessment that people take, and they assess themselves. We coach around that. But then the second phase is that everybody that Bob touches back at the home office at HQ, they are in categories. And so I say to Bob, we're going to have you rated in these categories by these people. So the C-suite's going to look at you. The warehouse is going to look at you. Your fellow salespeople are going to look at you, and they're going to rate you on the quality of your character. And there are 48 commendable traits. And so that's a lot, but they'll rate you, and then we'll look at where you're rated low. And so, for example, it was said over and over again that he's arrogant and condescending. So I just want everybody to stop a minute and think about what it's like to have an arrogant, condescending person roaming around the office. It's terrible. So he creates a lot of negative emotions wherever he goes. And then people sit around talking about him instead of doing the work they're supposed to be doing. Don't miss that. So we say, okay, arrogance and being condescending. So first of all, we have to tell Bob, here's the problem. Bob, you are the normal amount of stuff you need is self-assured. Does a salesperson need to be self-assured? Yes, gotta be confident. But when you overplay that, it becomes arrogance. So I need you to dial that back. So the coach sits with Bob and says, what behaviors could you intentionally do that would help people see that you've dialed back from arrogance to self-assured? And so in this case, the behaviors were saying please and thank you, making appointments with people, saying thank you, writing handwritten notes. Do you think those are all the things he does with his sales customers?
Exactly. I was going to say, you can just, if it's genuine, as in if it's genuine with the sales customer, I was wondering, do you have okay, we could talk about Bob as a specific example, but more in general,
Bob.
When people need that sort of corrective coaching and it's pretty unnerving to be under the spotlight like that from your colleagues. There's 48 different traits. And as you said, it's in the full 360, it sounds like, in all directions of people who interact with you.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty humbling stuff. Do people, there must be a normal set of reactions where there's kind of oh, that's exaggerated. Oh, I don't do that. Oh, and then eventually acceptance probably. But do you have sort of a standard set of reactions, and does that guide you in how to deal with them, or how, whether you think the process will actually work or not?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. It's all choice. So, if we work with Bob and we say, we want to do this, would you like to do this? Now, back to, slaying the Goliath, the thing you do, right? I have to negotiate a lot of times with my coaching clients, like, well, let's try this and see if that works. Like, I have to present things. I have to sell inside of the coaching process sometimes to get people to see the benefit of what I'm going to do.
That's what I'm getting at. Yeah. How do you win them over? Particularly if they're, with arrogance as a trait where people are like, I'm right and you're probably wrong, is like one of the key things. So as a perfect example, how do you get them to buy into the idea that they're not right and that there does need to be a change, and not a cosmetic one, not just like, you know what I mean? With the genuine, they can do the behavior, but do they actually care?
We're not putting lipstick on a pig, as they say here in North Carolina.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is though, when I sat down with William, I didn't really, I practiced candor. And I said, there's two types of coaching that I do, Bob. One is they tell me you're a high potential and I'm here to help you be stronger. And so let's look at your strengths. One of the tools I have in my toolbox is the Strengths Finder. So a lot of times with high potentials, I'll do that. I'm like, let's lean into that. Let's figure out what that looks like. I will help them. Oftentimes leaders don't do a good job of helping that high potential see where they're going. And so I'll say, what seat do you want? And I love it when a young person tells me, I want to be the CFO. I'm like, hot dang, let's make that happen. Now, it's not going to happen tomorrow, but what are the next developmental things? What meetings do you need to be part of? And we lay it all out in a little strategic plan for him. That's called career pathing, right? So we sit down and we work that out and see, and that's what makes a vibrant culture. Because here's the thing: I have a young guy. His name is Joe. And so I say, Joe, you want to be the CFO? That's why I said Joe the CFO. So he's going to be a CFO. Now I say, this might not happen for the next 15 years, but here's what you're going to need to do. Let's look at your education. Let's look at this. Okay. And so he has this coaching session. That's a high potential coaching session. It's once a month, every 12 months. I'm holding him accountable. He's getting his MBA. He's taking some finance course. He's going up to some fancy Harvard weekend. He's in these meetings. He's preparing pivot table chart things, whatever. He's doing all this stuff. He is excited about coming to work. And that is a vibrant culture. Now, on the flip side with Bob, when I sat down with him, I said, you are being coached because you are causing a problem.
Wow.
Is that the truth? Say yes.
Sure.
But I don't know why and so Bob, help us not have a problem. And so here is the problem, is that the word on the street is that you are overdone in your self-assured state. You come off condescending, you have broken rules, and we have these list of things. And it's completely apparent to your senior VP. Now, I'll often say this to Bob: isn't it amazing that they're getting you a coach? You're really lucky.
You must be a big deal. Yeah.
Right. We know you're the number one sales guy. But however, you're not our number one employee. So let's go there for a minute. Want to go there for a minute? He's the number one sales guy, but he is not the number one employee. Because here's the thing: is Bob a good employee? The answer is no. He's not, because he creates angst. And again, vibrant means lit up, having fun, making stuff happen, cooking, making, going up the feeling scale, where this is a great place to work, except for Bob. He's a little dark place. So, wherever he goes, are you familiar with the comic strip Peanuts? I'm dating myself.
Charlie
Okay,
Brown
and
and
you know
Snoopy.
Linus.
Everybody knows Snoopy, right? And
Right.
Linus,
Well,
with the blanket.
Yeah, that's not the right one though. What's the kid that has the little thing of dirt around him all the time?
Oh, I can't remember which guy that was. Anyway, that guy.
But,
right? Okay.
right. Well, he doesn't take a bath apparently, but he's got like this little cloud of dirt around him. I mean, like that's kind of like how Bob is. Like he walks in and immediately everybody is like, "Oh, Bob is here." So there's that little dark place wherever he goes, right? Let me tell you the name of this book real quick. It's up here on my shelf somewhere, but it's called Multipliers.
Mm-hmm.
And it hold on. Multipliers. It'll come to me in a minute. Anyways, multipliers. Anyway, write that down. Go Google it. You'll find it in 5 seconds. And in the book, the PhD, the fancy PhD that wrote this book, she says, some people walk in the room and they multiply the energy, and some people walk in the room and they diminish the energy. And I can't believe I can't think of her name. You're
Liz
Googling
Wiseman,
it right now.
is it?
Liz Wiseman. There we go.
How the best
Yes.
leaders make everyone smarter. Yes.
That's right. And that's what she's talking about is the same thing here, right? So if I come in and you're having a meeting and I'm on your team and I walk in the room like, oh, there he is. I love working for this guy. I mean, I'm like ready to go. I mean, talk about employee engagement, energy. I know you've got a plan.
This is absolutely key stuff. And it's a great point that you make, Nicole, because it's something that a lot of people overlook. That it's the Maya Angelou quote. I often use it in some of my trainings because it's the absolute key thing. People will forget what you said. They forget even what you did, but they won't forget how you felt in their presence. And you can't reiterate that enough. I mean, a simple question I used to ask was, remember your worst teacher or boss or sports coach. And I asked this of my dad who's in his 70s, and instantly he was back in school going, oh, I hated that guy. You know, but the emotional resonance is still there. Like the emotion is memory. So as you said, if you can change that very unpleasant emotion, because that's the atmosphere that's left, as you said, this is the multipliers that you're referring to. It's an amazing point. And that's what then, instead of spreading negativity across the organization, leaving a trail of negativity that disrupts, you're actually compounding that. Oh, here's Bob. Yeah, Bob's great. Bob used to be a complete a-hole, and now Bob is awesome, or whatever, you know.
That's exactly right.
And was it a matter then of like, do what you do when you're trying to land a sale? Was that a large part of it? Like, if in doubt, like, how would you interact with clients?
Well, again, I practiced candor with him because like, you know, I'm not dumb. I've been around a little while. You know what I mean? I understand how people work. And I know because I'm in sales and you're in sales. Everybody's in sales. Like, do you want to pick where you go to dinner tonight? You're in sales. So, you know, I sat down with him and I said to him, I said, William, it's mind-boggling to me that over here, you're the number one sales guy. And I know you have serious skills and you know how to treat people. But for whatever reason, you come over here and you don't treat people right. Tell me about that. And that's the coaching question. And then I shut up and he has to explain that to me. Now he's going to say whatever he's going to say, and then I'm going to follow the energy. How's that working for you? You know, what is it like to know that you make the young girl down in warehouse cry? Well, she shouldn't be in that job. Okay, she's in the job. How are you going to help her do her work better? You know, the guy's like almost 60 years old. Like, be a mentor. Come on, take the high road. Let's be, you know, let's do that. So sometimes people, they just have a little, dare I say this, like a little bit of meanness. He just had a little bit of meanness or something. And I called it out to him. I said, it's a little bit like you're just like a little mean or something sometimes. What's that about? Well, I don't mean to be. Okay, well, you are. So what could you do instead of being mean? Why don't you help the girl in the warehouse? Well, she's clueless. Okay, what kind of clue could you give her?
Right.
Be a helper, man. And so sometimes people just don't see, and they get in that arrogant, haughty place. Like, I shouldn't have to do that. Okay, well, do we want to get your sales order through the warehouse girl on the truck and delivered by Friday? Is that what we want? Then help the girl out. Give her a clue. It's that
Excellent stuff.
easy. Yeah.
Let's go to some principles here, because you're
Okay.
talking about creating vibrant culture in these organizations through more effective, but also more, as you said, visionary leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So you're creating better environments for people to thrive, for want of a better word, at work where possible. So what are some of here's a tricky question for you. What are some of the things that you believe about your industry, about leadership, and how people could or should lead, that most people either ignore or aren't aware of?
Okay. I would say that the thing they ignore are reinforcing behaviors that produce positive outcomes. So, so I'm going to say something to tee this up. So I interview lots of people in my business. One of the things I do to help people build a vibrant culture is I often do recruiting for them, because I know their company really well. And they're like, we need this guy or this gal for this job. And I'll be like, oh, okay, I'll go find you somebody. So I do some boutique recruiting. Okay. And so when I do that boutique recruiting, I'm looking for people who naturally behave in a way that matches the organization's culture, right? So they call that behavioral interviewing. Okay. So that's wonderful. And most companies don't do that. They usually read the resume, see if you have the technical skills, and hire you. Okay. Now, more and more, maybe in the big Bank of Americas with very fancy HR departments, they're doing a lot of that. But small business, medium-sized business, we got an empty hole. We're not getting stuff done. Put somebody with some skills in there. But to me, people who have the natural behaviors that match the culture, I can almost teach you anything, because again, it's just strategy, operations, sales, marketing, customer service. That's just what it is. So we want to work on behaviors. So oftentimes when I interview people, I will say, what's your ideal leader like? And they say, I don't want anybody to micromanage me. And so that's their answer. Now, here's the thing. People need a lot of supervision when they start a role. And the supervision they need is more around their soft skill behaviors, which I absolutely hate that phrase, but everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say it like that. And less around, like if you hired an accountant that's got 5 years of accounting experience, you need to show them how to log onto the computer. You got to show them the software, and pretty much they're going to do debit, credit, debit, credit, debit, credit, and they're going to be fine. But how they do the debit credits and adopt to the team is where the rubber meets the road. So one of the things that we ignore is, hey, this is how we work around here. This is how we treat each other. And these are the soft skills we put in place. So one of the things that I will do is I will use two things. One is I will take them through a book by Roger Schwartz, and it's Smarter Leaders, Smarter Teams. So I want to endorse that. He's a fancy PhD over at Chapel Hill. I read his book when I went through, got my master's degree. I was just like, this thing is genius. And he talks about unilateral control, which is where people micromanage, versus a mutual learning organization. So I love his model. So everybody go look at that, or email me and I'll send it to you. So I love that. I have a little PDF from Roger that I love. Now, the second thing is these things that are called group norms. And so again, when I went through my master's degree, I'd never heard of this idea of a group norm. I just wasn't schooled yet. And one of the things that my professor said is, he said, you can tell people how to behave. You say, this is how you behave if you work here. And you would think, well, we're all adults. Well, some of us are like Bob and some of us aren't. Some of us are multipliers and some of us are diminishers. So you got to tell everybody. So I'll give you an example of a couple of group norms, and then I'd like to hear what you have to say about what it is. But one of them is this: observe your choices and impacts. What do you think about that group norm? I want everybody to observe their choices and impacts.
It sounds interesting, but quite vague as to what does that actually look like.
All right. So then you have to tell people,
Mm,
right? So does Bob, in my little story about Bob, does he need to observe his choices and his impacts on the organization?
sure.
Yes, because you're being a jerk and we can't have that. So what we might do is at the end of the week, or once a month in your one-on-one with me, because I'm your leader, Bob, I'm going to say, tell me about some choices you've made this month that made a positive impact, and tell me about some choices this month that made a negative impact. Because leaders need to reflect on what they're doing. They they have to do that. I'll tell you another quick example of that one, because this thing of being arrogant and condescending it's huge out there. People that are listening to this are like, tell me about it. I had this young woman last week. She said, we were in this situation, we were doing group coaching, and I said, we're going to ask the focus person one question. And this is what she said. Like, she had such a huge blind spot. She said, well, my questions are pretty blunt. Is that going to be okay? And I said, no. I mean, why would she even ask me that? She has a huge blind spot. She's like, I'm blunt. Deal with it. No, we're not going to deal with it.
Rude.
Right.
You can be direct, but you can be empathetically direct,
Right. And if a female is blunt, she's a B. And I told her, you'll show up like a B. Don't do that.
It's the difference of, how does this look on me? And saying, you look god awful, versus, I think the other option might just suit you better. Like, that would look much better. If somebody, how does this thing, it's the same message. One is downright rude, the other is getting the same message, but in that little bit more of a compassionate, empathetic, bordering on diplomatic way, yeah.
Right. And so I just told her, no, that won't be okay. Think about the question so you can observe so you can observe the positive. You want to get a positive response from the focus person. She's like, oh, and say, I don't think anybody's ever said, no, that won't be okay. Good. But it's just like, if you had children, and they were out playing in the street, and your child stole the ball from the other kid, like went over and pushed him down and took their ball, would you allow that to go on? No, stop that. We don't do that.
Exactly. Calling it out. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but those are group norms. And I have a whole list of them. If anybody wants the list, I'll send you the list. But I like to, work these in slowly. And that also helps provide a vibrant culture, because now we're telling people that behavior is not allowed. We're not tolerating that, but it's in a very positive way. Please do observe your choices and impacts.
Exactly. I mean, this is the thing, that there's lovely energy because of the vision, because we're being an organization where people can, like the high performing team. It sounds like there's a lot of stuff there from Lencioni as well, high performing team, that you're building that trust because people can speak to each other in an honest, direct way, challenging each other, as you said, with that direct candor, but without just being unnecessarily rude or aggressive or any of that sort of more obnoxious aggression behavior. Yeah, absolutely. So, and it's also, people can see that hopefully that they're living those values or those principles that the company state, which, I mean, I loved what you said there earlier, just to loop back on the hiring, because a few friends of mine just gone through a lot of IT, working for IT now. One works for a giant law firm, but they're in IT. And what was interesting was almost all of it, after a brief competency test and tick, 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 the rest was, do you fit with the team? And they had to meet everybody that they might be working with to say, would this guy fit in? Is this person already most of the way like how we want to work? And I thought that was fascinating, because this is what I agree with you. I'd advocate that, absolutely. But it's just fascinating that of all of the interviews, more than 50% were for the behavior or culture fit, as they call it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just to double 100%. Down another point.
The IT guy's going to know how the server works.
Well, I mean, they're building the
server course.
I mean, they're building AI, they're building all these fancy contraption and creative processes and stuff. But It's the same thing. It's the same thing. The other point, just to double down, that I love that you made was that the necessity for reflection. I don't know about you,
Oh
but
my God.
so many companies I go into, they're doing this and they're doing that, and it's all great and exciting, but there's this problem, but they're not actually taking any time to reflect and potentially learn from their mistakes. It sounds amazingly simple when I put it like that, but this is one of these great overlooked things. Is that something that you find very common across a lot of companies you go into, or?
Yeah, I mean, they're just moving very, very quickly. But, it's been proven in research, and you already know this, like you just said. I mean, reflection is a number one leadership skill. And I suggest that leaders practice two things. And you can do it, if you're really amazing, you would do it daily, because it will ground you and center you. Okay. Or at least do it on Monday and Friday. Okay. That, like, start there and then try to work your way up to every day. But the first thing I talk about is practicing prime. So you want to prime the pump, right? So you get in your office on Monday, and I have a whole theory on no meetings on Monday. Everybody write that down. No meetings first thing on Monday. Everybody write it down.
I think a lot of people, you just want a huge load of fans there, like, oh yeah, I love this. Tell us more, Nicole.
Okay.
Why no meetings on Monday? What are people to do instead?
Yeah, well, they should have their meeting on Tuesday or Wednesday, halfway through the week. But anyways, so on Monday, you sit down, practice prime, and you ask yourself three questions. Where are we right now? Because remember, we have a vision and it's out in the future. So here's our 3-year thing. And I don't think I finished the IRP. Can I go back there for a second? I don't know. We got off on a tangent or something, but the introspective is the I. Like, what is our ideal future? That's the I. Then you turn back from the introspective and you do a retrospective of the future. Don't miss that. Retrospective usually in the past, but I'm doing a retrospective of the future. So if this is what we want, ideally, and then we look back, what has to happen to make this ideal future happen? So we're making a memory of the future. Weird, but wonderful. Then we say, what are we going to do based on what we figured out from the retrospective, which is a prospective, which propels us forward. So when you do your prime on Monday morning, you're stopping, and you personally as the leader are revisiting the IRP. I'm looking at my introspective, I'm looking at the retrospective, I'm looking at the prospective. And so I can say, well, here's where we were when we started, and now we're right here. So we've made that much progress, right? And we want to celebrate in our own mind the progress that we've made, make some notes, think about who was involved. So that is, where are we right now? So you personally as the leader are visiting the vision every day, if not once a week. Then you're going to say, what do I really want to have happen today? Now, and then you sit and you look at your calendar. You're like, I want my podcast to go well today. I want to give my assistant, Gail, 30 minutes of uninterrupted time because I've been gone for 5 days. And I want to check in on her because she's probably feeling a little disconnected from me. I know I'm feeling disconnected from her. I want to do this. I want to do that. So even though it's right there on the calendar, you're slowing your jets, and you talk about, how do you want that to go? A little bit of visualization. I can see me and Gail having coffee. We'll go out on the back deck. We'll sit outside. We'll pet the dog. That's what that will look like. That kind of thing. I'm going to put on my lipstick for Alistair. I'm going to do my hair. I'm wearing my pink shirt that goes with my sign. I think through things a little bit so I can be successful, right? Okay. And then all I say to myself is, what is the next right step to get this big vision done? So it's 3 little questions. Where am I now? What do I really want today? And what is my next right step? What am I going to, I'm nudging myself along that little recipe. Now, good leaders teach it to everybody on their team. So they're doing the same thing, right? Now, out of that might come an opportunity to write a thank you note, a quick email, text somebody, thank somebody, serve up some gratitude, which I think is very helpful. And then the thing you do at the end of the week or the end of the day is an examine. And an examine is all about you. So it's a little bit of like turning the mirror inward. And this is the part about the I, integrating integrity. So you're going to ask yourself, where did I light up the organization today? I wrote an email. I said, thank you. I wasn't overbearing. I was this, I was that. I contributed in the meeting. I did all these things. Where did I bring darkness? I was a little snippy with her. I was a little sassy with him. I did not get this work done that I said I would send to him. I overpromised and underdelivered right there. And whatever else.
I
It's
love
like being
that.
honest with yourself.
I love that. That's your integrity in action there, where nobody's
100%.
perfect. You know, sometimes, I forgot to call such and such back or reply to that email or whatever, so that you're weighing it up. But that's the point. It's on the scales. You're giving yourself credit for the things that you did do, and then, as you said, you're correctly saying, "Oh, could have done that better. That was okay. Could have been better. I really dropped the ball on that one," and so on. So I love that, because it's integrity in action. It's how you're doing it, and I would imagine that would compound. That would get that compound interest going.
That's right. Because one of the flaws in my personality is, like if we all took the personality, whatever personality test you want to pick, the front page of that personality test says, you're really good at this. And then on the back 3 pages, it says, be careful, you get really ugly sometimes. And here's the icky stuff you do. Like, it's almost like reading your tea leaves, right? And so one of the things that my personality does is that it starts a lot of stuff, but it may not finish all the stuff. Like finishing stuff. Oh my God. It is a big, huge thing for me. So if at the end of my day, I look and I say, I overpromised and underdelivered, like, what is my story? Okay. So you need to get focused, sister. Yes, you can do all these things, but you need to prioritize. And look, and I'm going to use, this is religious. So everybody who doesn't like that, just take a quick nap. But I have a mentor who is a very spiritual person, and she introduced this concept to me, and it was huge for me. She said, have you ever been walking around and you just kind of feel bad or icky, or you're just like, oh? And she said, oftentimes you are experiencing this religious word called desolation, and it's a big fat word, right? Desolation
sounds very dramatic. Yes.
Yeah. Well, you've probably heard of this gal named Brene Brown.
Sure, of course.
But she talks about shame, and she talks about guilt and stuff like that. Well, that's what you're experiencing. That's what desolation is. It's like, you screwed up again. You're a screw up. You do this all the time. Your little voice is telling you these things. And my mentor's like, pay attention. So stop whatever that is. Why? You don't need to be Superwoman. Just do what you can do. Promise what you know you can deliver. It'll still be more than the average bear. That's what she tells me. And then the other thing is consolation. So when you look at your list of, I wrote a thank you note, I was kind, I contributed, I was helpful, I did what I said I was going to do, then you feel warm and you feel consolation, which is the opposite. So that's what the examine can do. It can help you figure out where that feels awful and this feels fantastic. And so you can move your behavior towards fantastic and away from awful.
I love it because it compounds. It acknowledges the shortcomings without the blame, right. without that, as you said, that emotional guilt or shame or putting oneself down. But it also isn't saying, "Oh, I'm fantastic and everything's perfect," or any sort of lying nonsense like that.
Right, delusion. I call that delusion.
It is total delusion. Absolutely.
That's right.
Excellent. It has been absolutely fabulous to have you on the show, Nicole. I'm just looking here. One thing I did want to ask you is about we could keep talking for hours. One thing I did want to ask you, which I don't really have time, is about your TED Talk, which I saw, which was very, very interesting, which is all about what do I really want. And I just mentioned that because it's just one of those points that people, if they're listening to this, can go to learn more about you, more about some of the work that you do and your approach that you take. Because I don't think that there's a business really on earth that couldn't use some of your thinking and enhancing their culture and actually making it vibrant. So where can people get in touch with you? What are some of the good places they can see you?
Yeah. So you can go to www.vibrantcoaching.com and you can find me there. There's a little page. My phone number is right on the top of the page. You can call me.
Excellent.
I will talk to you. So you don't have to go through some shenanigans of just leaving your name and number. You can actually pick up the phone and dial me up. So it's right on the upper right-hand side.
Love it.
Yeah. Hey, here's what I know. We can't get together and know if we like each other when we work together if we don't have a conversation. At least that's what this 56-year-old thinks. So I think that's really important. And then also I do have a YouTube channel. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I'd love to be your friend on LinkedIn. And then you can see different things. And I do have a bi-weekly, I'm calling it a newsletter, also old school, that goes out. But in there, I'll have an article that talks about all the soft skill stuff, all the OD stuff, organization development stuff. And then it will also have podcasts like yours listed on there so people can listen to your genius. So there's a lot of resources out there, and I'd just love to talk to you.
Absolutely. And I have to second that. Nicole is great on LinkedIn. I don't know a lot of people spend a lot of time there. Check out Nicole, reach out to her, connect with her, and then begin a long, beautiful relationship and
like we
get in touch.
Have, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And as I said, if there is some cultural changes, Nicole is a great person to talk to on that. This has been fabulous. And thank you so much. There's been so many little insights. I'm going to enjoy going back through this to put together the show notes because there's a huge amount of gems. So thank you again for that. Thank you for being so generous.
Of course. Yeah, here's the thing. Is the world messed up? Everybody say yes.
Of course. Well, I don't think many people would disagree with you on that one.
And it is because we're all not living at our potential. Like just the moment Bob stops being dark and turns to light, it's like a whole Star Wars thing, right? I mean, the world's going to get better. It's just one human at a time. And the two of us are trying real hard to help people do that and try to shed it. Yeah,
absolutely. And look, I can't.
That would fix the world.
I'm in a similar boat with the culture part because you're just creating ripples. You create even if you're a company of 5 people, you have people that are interacting that bit better. People aren't looking away from going to work. They're looking forward to going to work. And when they come home and interact with others, they're in far better form. That has ripples out. Positivity.
You're better to your kids, better to your wife, better to your partner.
As you said, are you making things better or are you making them worse? So I could just double them down again. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, look, on that note, it's been fabulous.
Yeah, great to be with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Cheers, Nicole.